A duende followed me home. Guys, I made these earrings. They're so... Did you just say we could tell you made them? What the fuck, man? Why am I fighting in my office by myself? So this lady says that before this happened to her, she was not a big believer in the paranormal, much less a duende. So she just moved out of the city in Mexico into this small town, and it just so happened that when she moved, this little town was having a fair. So she decided to go to this fair, and as she's walking around, she stumbles into this little kiosk, and they were selling a lot of small figurines, including little duendes. She's with a couple of her friends, and she out loud says, "Oh my god, look at this figurine, it's so cute." And as she's saying that, she goes to reach for the little duende, and before she touches it, her friends are like, "Do not touch that duende, do not touch it." And she's like, "Why?" Already in her hand. Her friends were like, "You're not supposed to touch them, because if you don't end up buying it and taking care of it, it's gonna follow you home." She doesn't believe her friends, and she's like, "But he's so cute, look at the little figurine." And she puts it back down, and they went about their way. So they all have fun at the fair, they all go home, and she starts unpacking a lot of things in her house. You know, she's starting to get her routine going as she just moved into this place. After a couple of days, she did start to notice some strange things happening, and they weren't big, they were just like small little things. So the first thing that she started to notice was that her little dog would start to bark around 3 in the morning to the same door in her house. It was like clockwork. Every time it was 3 in the morning, the dog would start barking, she would come out and see what's going on, and the dog would be barking at the same door. Obviously, she checked to make sure nobody was in her house, and her other logical explanation was that, what if there's a rat in the house? What if there's like an animal in here and that's what my dog is seeing or hearing or something? She did end up setting up traps just to make sure there wasn't a rat or something, and nothing was ever caught. The other strange thing that started happening is that she started to lose her spoons and her forks, and a lot of other little things around the house were missing. When she finally thought to herself, "Oh my god, something's definitely going on," is when she opened up her freezer and there was a fork in there. Obviously, she didn't put the fork in there, and neither did her dog, and she lived with nobody else, so she was like, what the fuck is going on? She knows that no one else had been at her house, and she didn't put that fork in the freezer. And one day she ends up talking to one of her friends, and she's telling them everything that had started happening at her house. And that's when her friend was like, "Hey, don't you remember the duende that you touched at the fair? I bet you that duende followed you home, and that's who's doing all of this to you." And she said, to be honest, she didn't believe it. She was like, "There's no way that a duende followed me home." She tells her friend that she's being dramatic and she needs to let the duende topic go, because it's definitely not the duende. So by this point, she has a job, and she makes friends with this older lady at her job, and she starts telling the older lady all the things that have been happening at her house and how her friends think that they're the duendes. And then the old lady's like, it sounds like it is duendes actually. By this point, she's like, "There's no way you think that there's a duende at my house too." But also she's like, "Okay, let's just pretend that there is. What do you suggest I do?" And the older lady tells her, "Well, I think you need to have a ritual to get rid of the duende, but in order to do that, you're gonna have to go back to the fair and you're gonna have to buy the duende. If you don't buy the duende, it's gonna keep getting worse and it's gonna do more things to you." The lady tells her, once you get the duende, you're gonna go to a cemetery and you're gonna look for the area where the children are, and you're gonna dig the duende inside that area. So she ends up going back to the fair, and that little kiosk with all the figurines and the duendes was no longer there. So now she's like, shit, what do I do? Am I gonna keep this duende forever now? So she ends up calling her coworker again, and she's like, "Hey, this little kiosk with the duendes is gone. Is there anything else that I can do?" This lady ends up telling her, "Yeah, there's something else you can do, but you're gonna have to go get 4 candles. You're gonna put those candles on each corner of a room where you think this duende is the most active. You're gonna light up all the candles, you're gonna stand in the middle, and you're gonna say out loud, 'I do believe in you, I do believe that you're real.'" And that's exactly what she did. She set up the candles, and she felt like an idiot, but she stood in the middle of her bedroom. She's like, "I believe in you, I know you're real, I can feel your presence, I know that you're here." She's like, the weirdest thing happened. Following day, all of my forks, all of my spoons, all of the little things that were missing were right back where they should have been. Her house felt lighter. It wasn't like this dense energy anymore, and nothing ever went missing like that again. And that was the day that she believed in duendes, because yeah, she's like, if I had never experienced this, I would have never believed that these things were real. I almost wonder if like the duende was fucking with her more, because she kept insisting like, they're not real, you guys are tripping. And they're like, "Oh, we are real, and we're gonna prove it to you." Anyway, what do you guys think?
Okay, story time in my adventure in Mexico. Okay, so we used to travel a lot in car. Every year we used to go around December to Mexico. And this one year, I think it was my mom's like second year living over there. So she asked me to take her TV. So I gladly agreed. We're visiting Michoacan, and then we're going to head over to Jalisco, where my parents are from. Okay, so it's the day that we're going to visit my mom, and I am like hurrying my kids and everybody, and I'm like, let's go, because I do not want to be on the road when it starts getting dark. And not just even like because the roads are spooky as fuck over there and dark. It's because, I mean, I didn't want somebody to like pull us over because we were in a newer truck. We had a TV in the back, like the box. I didn't want somebody to like pull us over and take advantage of us, right? And then not just that, like the roads going to where my mom lives, you're on a damn cliff the whole time. Like there's no emergency like side of the road thing. So we end up getting lost in Guadalajara because they were building like some damn train. So my GPS kept making me go in circles basically, and we kept doing that for like almost 3 damn hours. At this time I'm like getting a little stressed out because I'm like, dude, we're gonna hit nightfall like when we end up going to my mom's, and I did not want that. But then I'm texting my mom and she's like, no, you should be fine, you know. She's reassuring me like we're gonna be okay. So we end up finally leaving Guadalajara, making it to Zapopan. And then before I get to my mom, there's a long ass road that takes you to their town, right? You have to go on that road. Like there's no other way. Unless you're gonna climb the mountains. I don't know. But it's called Venta del Astillero. So we get there and I'm like, okay, damn, yes, we're on the right path. There's still light out, but it's like 4 o'clock already. And mind you, from Michoacan, where I was at, to where my mom is at, it was only like an hour. And we had ended up leaving like at 11 from Michoacan. So I was stressing a bit. And then the kids are hungry. Then obviously I'm hungry. So we stop and we get some food. Right? On the side of the road. Está un puestecito de hamburguesas. So we're like, okay, something quick. We get a hamburger, blah, blah. Let's go. And so whenever we're eating, then I'm like, okay, it's time to go now. Like we hurried up, ate. And like cars would drive by, but they would like stare a lot at the truck. And that started worrying me because, I mean, it was that time when they were really like taking cars away from people. And it wasn't, I was like, okay, if they take my car, who cares? But what about my kids? Like, I'm not trying to have something go down to my kids, right? Or with me, or something happens to my kids. So we get back on the road, and mind you, this is, remember, this is the only road that can take you to San Cristobal. Like, there's no other road. There's a big ass bus in the middle of the road blocking us. Like, we cannot go. And the people outside the bus are like directing us to go to the right into this little town. And I'm looking at my ex and I'm telling him like, dude, no, like if we go into this town, there's no exit. Like, you just cannot go to the pueblo, right? You cannot go to San Cristobal. We're gonna hit a dead end. Like, what are we gonna do in this town? I don't know anybody. So I start stressing. I'm trying to text my mom, and like the messages are not even like, some are going through, some are not, because service sucks. And I start tripping out, honestly, because I'm like, dude, we're gonna fucking get killed, or they're gonna take the truck. And so we end up getting to a stoplight, and because we're just driving straight, like we don't know where to go, right? And I'm afraid like we pull over somewhere, and what if somebody's waiting for us? So we're not driving super fast, but he's driving like, you know, looking around, trying to like, I don't know, praying for some miracle to happen. Tell me why there's these 3 ladies on the side of the road, okay? And they're all with like their little bufanda thing, like their scarf that they put on their head. I don't know if you guys have seen, well, I know in Mexico a lot of people used to go into church and they used to cover their head with like a scarf thing, right? So they have those on, and I'm like so desperate that I'm like, disculpen, like, excuse me, ¿nos pueden ayudar? So the lady like kindly walks over to us. You could tell that they do not have much money. And so like, bien humildes. Okay, so they come over, and then I'm like, nos desviaron, like they told us we have to go through here. And she looks at me terrified, and she's like, ¿traes niños? And she's like, no, date la vuelta, like you have to turn around right now. And I'm like, sí, pero está un bus, like we cannot go, right? Like I'm explaining to her, and she's like, no, date la vuelta. She's like, vas a ver, mija, that whenever you go back, the bus is not going to be there anymore. Listen to me. She's like, because if you go straight, nada bueno va a pasar. So I look at my ex and I'm like, fuck, dude, like we'll turn around, like what the fuck, like what the hell else are we supposed to do? And so they like walk away, and they're like, you know, nos dan una bendición, and they're like, que Dios nos acompañe. And I'm like so thankful, right? I'm like, muchas gracias, you know. And I don't even know like where these ladies, like I don't even know what they're doing standing on the side of the road, like by that stop sign, by the stoplight. And they just honestly like kind of just like vanish. I don't even see where they go, because I'm like trying to look back to make sure that nobody's fucking following us. And I'm just like, dude, I'm like telling him, like, where the fuck do they go? Like, no están, like. And so then I'm like, oh my God, what if they're part of whoever told us to go to the side? You know, your mind starts thinking all kinds of stupid shit, right? So we end up getting back to the main road, and the damn bus is gone. Like, the road is completely open. Traffic is moving. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, what just happened? And mind you, whenever the bus was stopped there was a motorcycle. There was like two people on a motorcycle. So then I was like thinking, fuck, what if these people on the motorcycle are like waiting for us up ahead in the road? Because you can't do like a turnaround. Like if you turn around, you're gonna get hit by like oncoming cars or like the car behind you, right? And it's like not like there's hella traffic on the little road leading to my mom's house, but still, like, so many people have died on that road because they don't know how. I guess that the cliff is, you're on a cliff literally, and it's a lot of people traveling from Zacatecas to Guadalajara. They're not familiar with the road, right? There's literally a bus that went down, killed people. There's just like cross after cross from that damn road. And so I'm just like texting my mom, trying to, and like some messages are going through, some are not. And so we like, estoy con el santo en la boca, literally like just praying that nothing is behind us, that nobody's up ahead. And thank God, like when we get to my mom's, like we made it safely. But then I started telling my mom the story about, because she's like, well, what happened? And I'm explaining to her, and she's like, pero quién eran las señoras? And I'm like, Mom, I have no idea. Like they were just like on the side of the road. I swear to God, like if somebody just like placed them there. I feel like if those ladies were not there, who knows what would have happened to us. That was my encounter with, I don't know if it was paranormal or if it was just my luck, you know, or somebody up above that was really keeping an eye on us.
I think my sister's possessed, and she's trying to possess me too. This Spooky Sierra Storytime submission came from Ruby. This is a allegedly true story about her and her sister. So Ruby's 26, her sister Alice is 28. They grew up in Norfolk, Virginia, and they've always been very close. They don't have contact with their dad, and they cut contact with their mom when they were 18. So they were really all each other had. We said she's submitting this to the community because she's really looking for guidance. She's not sure if her sister needs to be checked in somewhere or if she needs a priest. And she said she doesn't know anything about demonic possession, but she has a feeling that that's what's going on here. So just to give you a little bit of background on both of their personalities, Ruby said that she's very free-spirited. She is a creative. She works from home, and she's not married. She has no kids, so she's not really tied down anywhere. Alice has always been the opposite. She met her fiance, later husband, in college. His name is James. As they came from sort of a broken home, Alice has always wanted a family of her own that she could love and cherish. Her and James have always been deeply in love since they met, and James's family has sort of adopted Alice and Ruby into their own family because they don't have parents of their own. Since college, Alice has worked as a school teacher for kindergartners. She's always wanted a bunch of kids, a bunch of dogs. She's always been goal-oriented. She's always had a very clear plan for her life, and that's why Ruby says she's so unsettled by the behaviors that Alice has been demonstrating for the past 2 years. Ruby said that Alice started to change in October of 2024. Alice and James' lease was coming up. They had been renting a small apartment, and they decided they wanted to start a family soon, and so they bought an old Victorian house built in the early 1900s in Richmond, Virginia. The house had been somewhat updated, like there was new appliances in the kitchen and the bathrooms were newer, but the original bones of the house were still there. There was original hardwood, an original fireplace, and it's also important to note that certain things were left in the house, like a very ornate mirror. one of the hallways, some bookshelves with a few old books left on them, and then some random junk in the attic in the basement. Ruby says the first time she visited the house, she thought it was cute, but it was definitely not the kind of house that she would want to be left alone in. It sort of gave her the creeps. A month after they moved in, they decided to host Thanksgiving for Ruby and for James's family at their new house because most of James's family had not seen the house yet. And so James's family is average size. She says he has a brother with a wife and kids, a few cousins, aunts and uncles, and then his parents. Thanksgiving Day, Ruby, Alice, and James's relatives all made dinner in the kitchen, and Ruby noticed that Alice was being sort of quiet, but she thought it was just she was stressed out from having all these people at her house. She thought the kids would break something or ruin the old hardwood or something like that, so she didn't really put too much stock into it. At the end of the day, Alice still hasn't pepped up at all, and so James walks his relatives out. He's saying goodbye in the driveway, and that's when Ruby hangs back. She's helping Alice clean up, and she says, "Hey, are you okay?" And Alice snaps her head to look at her, and she goes, "I'm fine. Why would you think I'm not?" Ruby just says, you've been super, super quiet all day, and I just wanted to make sure you're okay. And Alice says, yeah, I just didn't really sleep well last night because of the noise. And Ruby's like, what noise? And she's like, the tapping. And Ruby's like, what tapping? And she's like, yeah, I just hear this tapping all night. But no matter how hard I look or where I look, I can't find the noise. And Ruby dismisses this at first. She's like, it's probably just an old house noise. It's probably a pipe. And Alice is like, it's not a pipe. And she's like, well, has James heard it? And she's like, well, I've woken him up a few times, but he says he can't hear it. Looking back, Ruby says that this was the start of what she now believes was a pattern of concerning behavior, but back then, she didn't really question it. She really just thought it was a house noise. But over the next few weeks, Alice became more and more distant, but Ruby figured she was busy with moving in the new house, and so she didn't worry about it too much. But come closer to Christmas, she asked Alice, like, hey, are you guys hosting Christmas this year? And Alice says, no, we're not doing it. I think James's family's doing it, but I'm not going. And Ruby's like, why aren't you going? And she says, well, I've been really sick recently. I've been throwing up nonstop. And so initially, they both think that this is because Alice is pregnant, and they come to this conclusion rather quickly. It turns out that Alice was not pregnant, and it was a little bit sad, but her and James were not necessarily trying to have a baby. They weren't like not trying. They were kind of just like, if it happens, it happens, not tracking cycles or anything like that. So Ruby says, well, don't worry. I know you want a bunch of kids. It'll happen. And Alice says, I'm probably not going to have a bunch of kids. I think I'm infertile. And Ruby said this was surprising for her to hear because Alice had always planned on having a bunch of kids. She had talked about it openly. So it was just weird for her to say that she was probably infertile, but she didn't push her too much. She figured she was probably just grieving from finding out she wasn't pregnant. So come Christmas, Ruby actually did end up going to James's family, and she just says, she's not feeling well, and nobody really questions it. But her illness, her throwing up nonstop, her having this fever continues into the new year. And that's when Alice tells her one day, I think I'm going to switch my job around a little bit. I'm going to start teaching online instead of in person. And Ruby says she doesn't really understand like how the school system necessarily works, but she does know sometimes at the start of new semesters, teachers are brought on and leave. And so she thought that Alice saying that she was going to be teaching online was just to make it easier for the rest of the school year while she was dealing with this illness. But in February, Alice calls her crying one day and she says, I need you to come over. James left me. And Ruby was shocked because they had always seemingly had this perfect marriage. And so she rushes over there and she notices right off the bat that there's a lot of things missing and also a lot of things broken. Like picture frames are knocked off the mantle with glass all over the floor. She asks Alice what happened and she just says, we had a big fight this morning and he took off. Presses her for more information. She's like, obviously he did not just leave because you guys had one fight. Like you guys have always been so good. But Alice doesn't give her any other information. And she said she was fully prepared to take Alice's side regardless of what happened because that's her sister, that's her best friend. She still wanted to know the full details of what she was dealing with. She thought maybe that Alice had done something that she didn't want to admit to because then she thought Ruby would take James's side, but Alice just won't say anything else about it. But she does ask Ruby to stay the night that night. Did not have a guest room set up, so Ruby ended up sleeping in the bed with Alice. And they went to bed kind of early, but around 11 p.m. she wakes up to Alice shaking her awake and she says, do you hear it? Ruby's laying in the dark, listening in the silence, and she's like, I don't hear anything. And Alice snaps at her and she says, you're just like him. Of course you can't hear it. She gets out of bed, she flings open the door, she runs down the hallway, and Ruby follows her because she's very confused as to what's going on. She walks out in the hallway and she said immediately it felt like the house was like 50 degrees. But granted, this is Virginia, it's February, and it's an older house. So she's like, maybe the heat doesn't work right. But she's like, I swear to you, when I breathed, I could see my breath. Past her breath, she can see Alice moving frantically down the hall, pausing intermittently to listen at the walls. She's like, what are you doing? And Alice is like, I'm trying to find the source of the tapping. And she proceeds to go through every room. And finally, Ruby doesn't hear anything, can't convince her that there's no tapping sound. So she goes back and lays down in bed. And eventually around 6 a.m, Alice comes back in the room, sits at the end of the bed and stares at the wall until the sun comes up. This was the night that Ruby realized that Alice was probably having some kind of mental break and she probably needed some kind of help because she didn't hear anything at the house and she fully believed that whatever was going on was just in Alice's mind. In the morning, she tells Alice, hey, I have to go home. I have to get some work done. I can come back over later if you want. But Alice begs her to stay. She's like, you can work from here. I know you work remote. And Ruby was like, honestly, though, I just needed to decompress. And I also wanted to call James because I wanted the full side of the story. So I left. I told her I'd be back later. I got in my car and I called James, but he didn't answer. And she thought because it was the middle of a work day, he was probably just at work and he would call her back, but he doesn't. So she tries him again and again, and he's ignoring all of her calls. Later that day, Alice calls her again. She's like, are you coming back over tonight? And Ruby said she really didn't want to, but she knew that Alice needed her. So she reluctantly goes over there. She says she's going to sleep on the couch. She falls asleep kind of early, and around 3 in the morning, she hears Alice's door fly open and her stomping down the hall. Ruby said she just stayed on the couch. She did not want to go up there. She didn't want to disturb Alice, and she didn't want her to say anything creepy to her again because she was honestly a little bit scared. So she was drifting in and out of sleep on the couch, and that's when she heard the stairs creaking and Alice coming down, breathing this raggedy breath. Ruby says it was almost like she was gasping for air, even though she's never had respiratory issues. And then she hears this tapping coming from right above her head. So she opens her eyes and she sees Alice standing over her, tapping on the glass pane of the window. Alice says, this is what I hear all night. I want you to hear it too. And Ruby says, do you do this every night? And Alice says, yes. She stands over Ruby for an hour, tapping on the glass, whispering, this is what I hear all night long. Eventually, Alice went back upstairs, and as soon as the sun came up, Ruby left. She got in her car. She said she immediately called James. He didn't answer, but she called him again and again until finally he answered. But all he said when he picked up the phone was, the next time I'll talk to you will be at your sister's funeral. Do not contact me again, and he hangs up. Ruby says that's when the severity of everything really hit her, because not only was she losing her sister, but she was losing James and his family, which was really the only family that she's ever had as an adult. She said she started crying when she realized she was not going to get the full picture because whatever was going on with Alice, James did not want to talk about. And she started looking up different symptoms of mental illness to explain what her sister was going through. She actually posted on an online forum to find out if anyone had ever experienced something similar. And some people on a forum suggested that it might be possession because the tapping comes at a certain time. She wakes up at a certain time. That suggests that the veil between worlds is thinner. They also suggested that certain artifacts in the house could have been haunted. Ruby says, I didn't grow up religious. I don't really know anything about possessions or hauntings besides what I've seen in horror movies, but the thought did strike me as something that could be happening because it did all start as soon as they moved into that house. She started asking Alice questions as nonchalantly as she could. She was like, when did this start? And Alice says, as soon as we moved into the house. And then she says, did James file for divorce? And Alice says, yes, but I'm happy about it. He's like a leech. He was trying to pressure me into this family that I didn't want. Alice says, have you heard anything else in the house? She says, yeah, I hear somebody walking around at night. James never heard that either because the house didn't like him. Said it felt like Alice was trying to brainwash her into thinking that James was evil, even though he had never been anything but good to her. And Alice also changed in other ways. For example, she stopped going out at all. She wouldn't grocery shop. She wouldn't run errands with Ruby, even though that's something that they always did together. They stopped going on their annual summer vacation. Alice said she didn't want to be in the sun. And one day, Ruby decided she was going to stop by with some fast food that Alice had always loved in order to cheer her up. Alice said, I don't want that. I don't even need to eat anymore. And Ruby said, what are you talking about? And she said, yeah, I don't have any use for things like that. All right, this one's really long. I'm posting another part right now. This is part 2 of I think my sister's possessed and is trying to possess me too. I usually try to do all videos in one part, but this one was really long and there was a lot of relevant information. So that's why this is the second part. But the first part to this, if you haven't seen it, is right before this on my page. I literally just posted it. So we were at the point where Alice had stopped eating completely. Ruby had showed up to her house with some fast food that Alice had always loved. And Alice tells her, I don't eat that. I don't have any use for things like that. And Ruby's like, what are you talking about? And Alice says, I don't eat anymore. And Ruby thinks this is strange. Like, she knows that she hasn't been grocery shopping, but she's also like, of course she's eating. Like, of course she has to eat something. So Alice goes to the bathroom and Ruby starts looking through her kitchen and she opens up the refrigerator and she realizes there's no food, like not even a single condiment in there. She opens up the cupboards, the pantry, there's no food. She opens up where they kept the plates and cups and notices there's nothing in those cabinets either. And when Alice comes back into the kitchen, she's like, what are you doing? And Ruby's like, where did all your cups and plates go? Alice says, I told you I didn't have any use for those things. I don't eat anymore, so I threw them all away. Ruby's like, honestly, it would have been a better answer if she just told me that James took them all when he left. But not trying to pressure her into talking about something she doesn't want to. She's like, why don't we just watch some TV and like turn our brains off and like watch something funny? So she puts a funny episode of something that they loved on the TV, and Alice's eyes are just glazed over. Like, she's not even paying attention. And they're watching the show for about 20 minutes, and there's not even so much as a laugh from Alice when all of a sudden Alice looks at her and she says, what do you think happens when we die? Ruby said that the question sort of startled her, but she has never been religious, so she just looked at her and was like, I don't know. I don't think there's anything. I think that we die and that's it. And with this creepy voice, she said it was like almost like it wasn't even her sister's. Alice says, no, there's more when we die. I can show you if you want. And she started laughing, and she says the laugh was not Alice's, and every hair stood up on her body, and Ruby just says, no, thank you. She said her saying that scared her more than anything. She has not been back to the house since that happened, and that was in January. So she said that she left shortly after that. She tried calling James again. He did not answer. His phone was disconnected. So she calls his work because she's like, I need to talk to him. I need to find out what happened. And his work tells her that he has relocated. He's not even working for the same company anymore. She tries to reach out to James's family, and none of them will return her calls either. Since that happened, Alice has been relentless. She has been trying to get Ruby to come to her house every single night. She texts her saying, I need you to stay over here, but Ruby's too scared to. And she says, I don't know what I need to do at this point. I know nothing about paranormal activity. I can't drag her to see a priest if she won't go willingly. I can't have her checked into a mental hospital if she won't go willingly. She says, I literally have no one else. That's my only family, and I have no idea as to what I should do. She said, I've started praying. I've started going to church, but I have no other answers. So I'm looking for any advice. That I'm willing to try anything, no matter how taboo it is, in order to save my sister. In the meantime, she's too afraid to go over there because she said that I'm afraid she's trying to get me too. Or do you think I'm reading too much into it?
We listen, we don't get scared, and we don't judge. Let me tell you guys a story time of when I was playing with this boy in the fields, in the villages, and we found a bottle with his parents' photo inside with needles and coins. So this boy stayed near my cousin's Bozy, right? And this day, my cousin was sick. Like, his mom had taken him to the clinic. So it was just me and him. We go down to my grandma's house, and I take him with me, sorry. We get to my grandma's house and we're playing and we're bored. And he's like, no man, let's go play in the fields, right? Because in the fields, they are like fruit trees, indigenous fruits. Right, so he's like, we'll pick the trees, we'll sit under the trees, and we'll just chill over there. This particular field is near a mountain, right? Chilled. We go there at that particular tree, and we start playing. We're chilling, we're talking. It's fun. Kid stuff. We get on top of the tree, we get stuff. So he tells me to get on top of the tree and see like how the view is, and I'm like, yeah, sure. I get on top of the tree and I see a bottle, in the near distance. I see a bottle. I'm like, I want to see what's inside that. Like, what bottle is that? Because in my mind, I thought maybe like it's one of those bottles that people from like 20 years ago left there. So, I don't know. I just wanted to go see the bottle. I tell this boy, let's go. I want to show you something. We get to this bottle and, this bottle is kind of moldy, like it's got green stuff in it. And I'm like, I wonder what this is. He's like, yo, like this is crazy. Like, should we open it? I'm like, yeah, let's open it and dunk the stuff out so we see what it is. Initially, this bottle, guys, was black. We didn't see what was inside, but we could see the molds inside the bottle. That's why we were like, we want to see what's inside of this bottle. The boy opens the bottle and he starts like shaking it, right? And as he shakes it, it starts to become clear. And I'm like, oh, that's weird. And then as he shakes it, it becomes clear. And then we can see that there's something inside, and like coins at this point are you can hear the coins inside the bottle, because as the more he's shaking, the more stuff you start to hear inside this bottle, right? So we shake it and then he dumps the stuff out. As he's dumping the stuff out of this bottle, a photo comes out, And I'm like, whoa, We wiped up the photo we did not know, guys, that we were breaking a curse. So we wrapped the photo on the grass and he's like, wait, that's my mom. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah. And I look at the picture. I'm like, yeah, that is your dad. That's your mom. And it's a picture of them on their wedding day. There's nothing written on the back of the picture. But there were needles that were inside the bottle and coins were falling out. And, I'm just like, hey, bo. So I was like, no, we should go back to your house to go show your parents this, And we take the bottle, we put the stuff back. The coins, I don't know how the coins got inside that bottle because it was silver coins, So I don't know how a 2 rand was able to fit inside there because the 1 rands were able to fit, but the 2 rands, we picked them up with our hands. And we put the needles back because it was like 4 needles, right? 4 needles. And then we put them back, we closed the bottle, and then we took it back to the boy's house. Mind you, I'm holding these coins like this. Imagine if they turned into a snake or something. We start walking back. We're walking back to the boy's house. When we get to the boy's house, the mom is inside the yard and she's sitting under the tree. So we go to her and then I get there and I dump the coins in front of her. And the boy is like, Mom, look at what I found. Look at what we found in the field, right? She's like, what the hell is that? And she starts shouting at us as to why we would take things in the fields and bring them in the yard. Can't we see you're bringing bad spirits? And we're like, I was like, no, ma'am, this is actually a bottle that had your photo and your husband's inside of it. She's like, what? We're like, yeah, again, we open the bottle, we dump it out. She sees the photo, the needles, the money, and all of that. She's like, what the hell? So like she's scared or whatever, and you know, she calls the dad, and you know, that is the boy's grandma's house, and they came to visit for the holidays, and she shows the husband, and they immediately are like, listen, let's go and see a pagan. And they come with me, but they go to my grandma's house and tell the story first before they just take me to a random spiritual healer, and things go wrong for me. You know, they went and asked my grandparents first, and my grandma was like, no, it's fine, you can take her with. We go there. However, we get there, guys, we're there, we take off our shoes, we get inside the man's hut, and then he tells the parents that, you know, like basically it was basically the boy's ancestors that led him to us playing in that field because we were meant to see that bottle. So the man is like, the person who did all of this is the lady's best friend. So basically the lady's best friend is jealous because she got married, she has a child, and also I forgot to mention that inside that bottle was also a teddy bear, like a really small teddy bear, and the teddy bear was meant to represent the boy that I was with, their kid. So basically the best friend is jealous because the lady, the boy's mom, went on to get married, and she got married to a good husband, and they left the villages and they went to the city, and they're living a good life, and now she has a kid. The boy's mom's best friend doesn't have kids, and she's not married, and she's still stuck in the village. And the boy's mom is like, but I tried to help this person get a job. Like, I've been taking her CVs and trying to help her get on her feet, and why is she doing this? And she's like, she wants your life, basically. She wants you to die so that she can have the husband, and also she wants the child to die. That's why the child has been going in and out of the hospital. Mind you, this boy had eczema, like really bad eczema, y'all. Sometimes he looked like a snake, like a lizard. He looked like a lizard sometimes because of that. And he was like, yes, that's why he got this eczema that's not normal, because he wants the lady's best friend, you know, wanted to basically people to look at the boy and be like, oh no, he's incurable, we can't help him. You know, they were gonna be scared of his skin or whatever. And you know, I didn't care if he looked like that. Sometimes he would look like that and he would be better. I don't care, you know. I would touch them to feel like, how does this, it felt scary, but I wanted to experience. And at the same time, like, we didn't really care, you know. So obviously this best friends thing was not working, whatever. She was getting mad, and she was just trying to make things like worse and worse, and like, you know, yeah. So this was the final straw, basically. And yeah, the man was like, you need to get away from that best friend, because your best friend, number one, is very lazy. She doesn't want to work hard to get things. She wants things to be handed to her, you know. And you know, the boy's mom was like, yeah, no, like, she is like that. She is lazy, you know, but I am trying to help her because she's my friend. And the guy was like, no, cut her off immediately. And as for me, nothing was gonna happen to me. And you know, they gave the family things or whatever, and then they left. And the boy's skin did improve, y'all, even though he still has eczema to this day, but it did improve, like, very immaculacy. I don't know, but you get what I'm trying to say. But it improved greatly. Be careful of your friends, especially the older gang, the ones that are married, and your friend is not married.
His literal dream came true. Guys, listen to this crazy story. He says that this absolutely 100% really happened to him. This man says that when he was a kid, he was at the grocery store and he saw a small toy helicopter that for some reason he just wanted very badly. And of course, his mom didn't buy it, but he says the memory of it was really just stuck in his head. So a few nights later, he started having a dream that he had this helicopter and he was playing with it. But during the dream, he kind of realized that he was dreaming. And then he said, and stupid young him thought, maybe if I put this underneath my pillow in my dream, it'll be there when I wake up. And then guys, get this, the next day he woke up and he eagerly pulled the pillow up to look underneath, and that helicopter was there. It was right there where he left it in his dream. He said that as a kid, he wasn't very surprised that it was there, but when he got older, looking back, he has no idea how that thing could have gotten there. It almost kind of takes like manifestation to an entirely new level. Anyway, I love that short little story. What do you guys think? Is this just him remembering it wrong because he was a kid? Is this like extreme manifestation or something with timelines. Anyway, drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you have your own creepy or fascinating story otherwise, I would love to hear it. And if you're new here, definitely follow for more creepy story time. I got a really scary one for you. So there's this girl who was working at a company for 12 years, gave 12 years of her life to this job that she thought if she was loyal at, that she'd have security. But despite all her hardworking efforts, right around Christmas time, her position was eliminated. This left her high and dry, no warning, just gone. And if you haven't guessed already, that girl is me. I don't usually make videos like this here, and I'm not going to continue to. I just wanted to pop on and say, creepy story time is my absolute passion. It is my baby, but it doesn't pay the bill. Now, I'm not on here asking for a handout or anything like that at all. So I decided to make another page, and I'm trying to monetize over there in a different way. I noticed that when you hit a certain amount of followers, the algorithm boosts you further. And if you could please follow that other profile listed in my bio, I would be greatly appreciative. You don't have to interact with the account other than that, or even feel, pressure to join or buy in. I just wanted to sort of get that better reach, and I know that the power of social media and the power of you amazing people on TikTok and what it can do. So I thought, why not give it a shot? All right, enough of that. Next video you see, it's going to be strictly creepy story time.
Let's read some creepy stories that were sent to us. I was working as a call center agent in the Philippines for 3 years. I was under a healthcare insurance company in New York. It was during daylight savings, which means that the company is open during Saturdays too, and usually during Saturday shifts, there are only about 10 to 15 people that would work, instead of the normal 50 to 80. I was working, the usual, taking in calls, and I received a call from an elderly woman. She was 97 and mentioned that she would like to check her insurance. While I was checking her account, she suddenly said, "You must be working from home. I can hear your children in the background," which got me confused since I was in the office and the person next to me is sitting 5 chairs away from me. I told her, "I'm actually at the office and I am so sorry for the noise in the background," thinking that she was referring to my workmates. She then said, "No, I hear kids. They are yelling. They might be fighting." I started to get creeped out, so I just continued with the call and ended it. Break time comes and I usually vape, but since it was raining pretty hard, I just decided to do it in the bathroom. After quite some time, I also started to hear kids that were shouting. It sounded like they were playing or just screaming at this point. I started to smell smoke, but since I was vaping, I just thought it was me. I also heard in a kid's voice saying, "It's smoking inside, we should go." So I quickly hid my vape thinking I was caught, and I was thinking, kids aren't allowed here and nobody in the HR, IT, or security office would bring their kids in the office at 12 a.m. I shrugged it off once again, and when I got in the floor, they were talking about scary stories of the building. That was when I learned that the company was actually built on top of a burned down bar around 1990, and there were kids that were involved since they were homeless and would sometimes sleep in the parking area of the bar. Nobody knew they were there. They got trapped inside, and it just so happens that day was the anniversary of the fire. That's when everything sunk in. The smoke, the screaming, the kids' voices. I was also smoking in the bathroom, which might be why I heard them. Their souls must have thought it was a fire once again. After that day, I still had many experiences in the building because it seems like after you know the history, they will haunt you even more. It still gives me chills to this day. But I have already resigned and I'm just working from home now. Okay, that one is obviously so freaking sad, but also like really crazy. And if there is another side, I hope they make it there so they don't have to just be stuck in this place where they lost their lives. As a child, I lived in an RV with my younger sister and my 2 parents. I was a curious youngin' and would always play outside when bored or somber. One day, when my parents wanted to move the RV we lived in to a new spot, I decided to look back at the old spot once we fully moved. Right on top of the gravel was a freshly dead mouse. I'm not sure how it died, as it had no wounds and didn't seem very old. I went to my sister and showed her the dead mouse, which we jokingly named Jeremy. For the next few days, we would visit his grave, where he died, and host pretend funerals. One day, without my sister, I went to check back on this dead mouse. I poked the little thing with a stick, and the corpse began to bleed a little.
my child self felt guilty and buried him under the gravel as an apology to the dead mouse. Right as I began to travel back home to my RV, I felt an extraordinary, sharp, stinging pain in my upper canine teeth. Right as this happened, my ears began to ring loudly and I felt dizzy. It stopped after a few seconds and I immediately felt sick to my stomach afterward. I did not tell anyone in my family about it. Fast forward a day or two, and I went to visit the dead mouse once more, and to my surprise, it was nowhere near where I buried him. To this day, I'm not sure what that feeling was from or where the dead mouse went. I have never felt that feeling before or since. I feel like maybe the mouse's spirit was getting like a little revenge on this person for maybe poking its dead body. They were a child though, and they did give the mouse a proper burial. But yeah, I do think that was the mouse's spirit, maybe trying to like get back at this person. What do you think though? Because I've never heard a story like this before, but I did find it very interesting. This story happened last year. I remember Snapchat was down, so I went outside to make a TikTok for some reason. It was like 10 p.m. Anyways, at the back of my house is a massive bamboo forest. I live in New Zealand. And I heard my dad say my name and ask what I was doing. It sounded like he was in the bamboo, but also his room is down there, so I assumed it was just coming from his room. I went back inside and asked if he called, and he told me he just heard me calling out to him from the bamboo. We were both really confused but laughed it off. Okay, so they think that maybe it was I am not even going to attempt to say that name. But people from New Zealand, could that maybe have been it? Kind of sounds like a mimic to me. That's really freaky, and I'm so glad that neither of them like went to the bamboo to check on them or what they thought was them. Let's read another scary Reddit story. Hello, this is my first time writing something like this, so feel free to ask for more info if I don't give enough. I, 18-year-old female, recently moved back into my old bedroom at my dad's house. The neighborhood is relatively safe. No crimes or break-ins, just a good old southern area. Moving back has been hard, so it's making me rethink on this a lot, and I just need clarification. Wednesday, February 4th, 10:45-ish p.m. I'm in my room on the phone with my friend, planning our sleepover. I'm in the middle of doing my lashes while she's kind of off screen. All of a sudden, I hear 3 loud knocks on my window. My heart dropped, and I said her name. She asked what's up, and I asked if she knocked on something in her room, to which she says no. I get up and go to my dad's room, who was passed out, and told him to come look. Still groggy, he got up to come check it. Nothing's there. He told me no one could reach the window, as it's about 9 to 10 feet high off the ground. I get in bed and fall asleep. Saturday, February 6th, 10:56 p.m. Again, I'm on the phone with my friend, listening to music and playing some games. Out of nowhere, I heard a bang on my window. I thought it was maybe my music, knowing it wasn't, so I replayed it a few times. I look at my cat on his cat tree and notice he's staring out of the window. I go to get a video of him being weird, and I caught the fucking knocking on my window. I texted my dad, and he came home ASAP. He drove around to the side of the house my room's on, and there's bricks under my window. He got out of the car and stood on them. Turns out, when he stood on them, he could just barely reach my window. Tomorrow we are getting cameras to see what it is, and if I'm actually crazy or not. I'll add the video as soon as I can for the people who would like to see or hear the knocking. This was posted just yesterday. There's no update, but I will come back to look for the update.
Let's read another true and scary story. So, I'm 14 years old, and this first story happened when I was 11. For context, I live in the middle of a forest with a hiking trail behind my house and neighbors not close to my house at all. I know, sounds perfect for something paranormal to happen. I was with my best friend, and we have this tradition where we go on hikes together. Since we go to different schools and are both busy with sports, we don't get to see each other in person very often. That day, we decided to go for a hike at about 5 p.m. while our families were cooking dinner. We put on sweatshirts, headed outside, and started walking. At first, the hike seemed totally normal. We were laughing, joking around, and just having fun together. But then we started to feel something off. The sun was going down faster. It started getting dark, so we decided to head back. The problem was we were pretty far into the forest. As we speed walked through the trails, our steps started sounding heavier, maybe louder, It's not like the forest went completely quiet or anything. We could still hear the crickets, but our footsteps felt wrong. Now we felt like we were being followed and watched. By then, it was around 5:45 p.m., and there was only a slight sunset glow left, enough so we could see the ground, but not far around us. Then we heard something. Something moving at a little too perfect of a pace and a little too clean, like it was carefully avoiding stepping on anything. We had just passed the flag that marks our property, and we could still vaguely hear the footsteps behind us at the same pace, even though we kept changing our speed. We started using our notes app to talk because, hell no, we did not want some serial killer hearing our conversations. We both felt it, we both heard it, but we both didn't see it. We were so close to the fence surrounding the farm and basically jogging at this point. When she looked back, I heard a slight gasp, like she saw something but didn't want it to notice us. I refused to look back. We finally got home just in time for dinner. The entire meal, she just stared at her plate. When we got back to my room, she finally told me. What she saw was not human, not even a little. She said it was almost like 6 feet tall, but could easily be hidden. Pale, yellow-colored skin, absolutely no hair. To me, that sounds like a flesh pedestrian, but there are so many other things it could be. Nothing happened after that, but I will never forget the look on her face after she glanced back. Thank you so much, Skylar, for sending this one in. I think I agree with you. This sounds like something similar to a flesh pedestrian, or even more creepy, this could be something similar to the pale crawler, also known as the rake. If you've never heard of the rake before, this is a cryptid that is typically roaming around at night in forests. The rakes are said to have no hair, yellowish skin, small eyes and small face, and very, very long arms and legs. So this sounds very similar to what your friend was describing. Thank you again, Skylar, for sending this one in. If you guys have any stories you'd like me to read, please email them to me and I will get to them if I can. And I will see you in the next one.
Hello and welcome back to a series of spooky stories, The Haunted Tea Spill. This series is brought to you by all things spooky and ungodly amounts of paranormal activity. Today is my birthday. I'm old as fuck and I feel it. Also featuring my little cutesy necklace. This one is probably my favorite one right now. If you think she's cute too, she will be linked. Now into the story. I went to a trade school right out of high school. It was an old military base in the US. And it was well known that that campus was haunted. Lots of stories. I have multiple by myself, but this one always stood out to me. I was walking around late at night with some friends, just exploring and enjoying the chill night. There were several buildings on this campus. The one closest in the story was my dorm, which was like 20 to 30 feet behind us, and there were woods right next to the dorm to our left. You know, it's about to get fucking creepy whenever someone mentions the woods. We did a lap of the campus, and I saw multiple things, and my friends did as well. Fuck does that mean? What did you see? The most memorable was right near the water. There was this bench that looked out to the water and a dock nearby. It was dead silent, probably close to midnight, just us three. We kept hearing something in the water. I was standing on the edge of the grass ledge trying to see what was splashing. Here is where I should note that I am no stranger to the paranormal, so no, I wasn't panicked by this at first. Y'all are some brave bitches out here. I started smelling a pipe. Smoking was strictly not allowed on campus, so I started looking around, but the only people were my friends like 5 feet behind me talking, and neither are smokers. Then I heard him, an older man's voice, literally reminiscing about how he used to stand here and smoke and loved watching the water. I would love to also be standing here with not you, Mr. Ghostman. I would love that. Again, I wasn't really alarmed since he seemed friendly. Fuck that! I don't give a fuck if it's Casper, bitch! He talked for a minute before all three of us, me and my friends, heard a growl from the trees next to us. An even bigger fuck no, bitch. There are no predatory animals on or around the schoolyard. There's deer, but no predators. The voice I was hearing went from friendly to dead serious. He told me not to run, but grab my friends and quickly walk to our rooms immediately. You know what, Mr. Ghostman? You ain't gotta tell me twice. Now, we all heard the growl, so even without his warning, we were starting to leave. Still have no clue what growled at us. It sounded maybe 20 or 30 feet away. None of us could see it, and the trees weren't that thick in that spot. We didn't go near that water at night anymore. That was probably a good idea. Shout out to Mr. Ghostman for looking out. Still creepy as fuck, Mr. Ghostman, but you're maybe not so bad. Anywho, rated on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the least scary, creepy, spooky, 10 being the most. If you have a story of your own that you want to submit, you can do so on the link tree in my profile. I will see you all the next episode. Stay spooky, friends.
This might be a little different to the emails you normally receive, as this one comes with CCTV footage to go alongside the story.
Okay.
The supernatural tale isn't my own, but my dad's. He worked as a porter at South Tyneside Hospital. My dad has had a few spooky stories, from seeing ghostly apparitions of children or hearing his name being called in the morgue, but it is this story that I find particularly unsettling, as he managed to get video proof too.
Stunning.
This incident happened a few years ago. It's roughly 2 a.m. in the morning. My dad tells me that his shift has been pretty bang average so far. He gets a call on the radio that a patient needs moving between wards, so him and his colleague are making their way down the endless corridors. As they're walking down a corridor, both my dad, who's the guy on the right, and his colleague feel a sensation of something pushing between them and a blast of cold air. My dad said the encounter made the hairs on his arm stand up. You can see on the footage that they both stop at the same time, holding up their arms closest to one another, describing the sensation that they both felt. They continue onto their job, but are somewhat startled by what just happened and head into the staff room. While there, they mention their experience to another porter and a member of security who happens to be in the staff room. They decide to do their own paranormal investigation and review the video footage to see if it caught anything from the incident. You can see and hear from the description in the footage that the security guy finds the camera which is recording from the opposite end of the corridor. Starting it at the same time, you can see the outline of my dad and his colleague making their way up towards a CCTV camera. However, something not caught on the original footage is a pair of two shadowed individuals making their way out of the doorway and walking towards my dad. The shadow couple walk directly between my dad and his colleague. You can easily see when they feel a presence and stop to discuss the sensation that they've both felt. The shadow people continue to walk on. I'd like to call them ghosts. This is the video where you can see them go, ooh.
Yeah.
So watch that.
Both fit inside arm as well, isn't it? Aye. Something's went between them. Nothing comes out with it.
Like two regular blokes, don't they, as well? It's not like...
Carry on walking.
Whoa.
So nothing, so then...
So they felt something there, did they?
Yeah, and then they check the others, so that's them again, but from a different angle.
Yeah.
And then...
You see it on the left.
That's them there.
Yeah.
There's the door. There's the two figures coming down, two lads. Two figures walk between them. But they're not out of that camera. Look at them two people.
What the
What the is that?
There's the door. There's the two figures coming down, two lads.
Oh my god.
Two figures walk between them. But they're not out of that camera. It's fucking bizarre.
They're not on the other camera. What the Amy, if you can get us in South Tyneside Hospital,
Yeah.
please let us know.
On a night shift.
That is really scary.
That's horrid.
Weird spooky dating stories. At the beginning of the year, my cousin told my aunt about his possessed girlfriend, whom he had been dating for years. He decided to reveal his girlfriend's secret because he said she really needed help and she had allowed him to tell. She had a history of being possessed since she was little and had been doing things to his cat when he was away from home. What the heck? Overall, she was just unstable and he couldn't stand sharing the same bed with her anymore. He was so scared that he slept with one eye open every night. My aunt, who is a Christian woman, told her church the situation and invited my cousin and his girlfriend to have the evil spirit exorcised. On the day of the exorcism, the church members prayed and attempted to cast the spirit from her. I thought you couldn't do an exorcism unless it was like approved by like the Vatican or like some special church. Like, isn't there like some crazy process you're supposed to go through? I don't know. Maybe that's just what they say in the Conjuring movies. Several members of the church claimed they heard and saw something go out through the front doors. The doors were found ajar, even though they had been closed and locked before the service began. That night, when my aunt went to sleep, she dreamed of the evil spirit, appearing as a woman, came to visit her. She wasn't alone. She brought another spirit with her, making two in total. The spirit was furious and threatened to come back and destroy my aunt for bringing my cousin's girlfriend to the church to be exorcised. My aunt woke up from the dream, but she said she didn't care. Your aunt didn't care? Okay, so maybe this girlfriend had like multiple possessions. Maybe she's still possessed. I mean, maybe you only exorcised like two of like the weakest demons in there, and now they're like PO'd because you're messing with them. And what do you mean your aunt doesn't care? Like, is it because she's like, I'm a Christian woman and I've got God to protect me? Or like, I'm confused. I need more answers. Anyway, let me know in the comments what you guys think, or if you have a weird spooky dating story, send it my way.
What would happen if you followed a mimic? Now, I've always wondered this, because you hear these stories of someone hearing like their mother knocking at the door or telling them to come in the kitchen. But what would happen if you actually listened to the mimic. Here's a story that might tell you why you should not follow a mimic. There was this young man named Aiden. Now, Aiden lived with his grandfather and his two parents. Now, one day, Aiden was hanging out in his bedroom, and he's playing a game. Well, he hears his parents like pull in, and he looks out the window and sees them getting out of the car, unloading some groceries into the house. So he's like, awesome, man, we're gonna have something to eat. So he goes back to his game, and then he hears his mother say, Aiden, come in the kitchen, I got some food. And he, at this time was like in the middle of a battle. So he's like, hold on, Mom, I'll be there shortly, I'm in the middle of a battle. And she goes, come on, Aiden, hurry up, come in the kitchen. And all of a sudden, he said he got a phone call, and it was from his mom. And he's like, why is she calling me when she's in the kitchen? So he picks it up, and his mom's like, hey, honey, we're at the grocery store. Do you want us to get you anything? And he goes, what do you mean you're at the grocery store? You already got groceries. You're in the kitchen. And she goes, what are you talking about? We just got to the grocery store. And he looks out the window and sees that their car is not there. And then right at this moment, he hears his mom saying, you better get in the kitchen right now or you're going to be in trouble. You better come eat. And he's like, I got to call you back, Mom. He hangs up. So he goes and he locks his door, and then he calls his mom right back and is like, look, when you get home, call me. I'll help you bring in the groceries. So about 25, 30 minutes later, his mom calls him, and she's like, honey, we're home. Come outside. And he said he was getting ready to go out of his room, but he looked out his window first, and their car wasn't there. So he's like, you know what? I don't know what to do because I don't know who really is my mom right now. So as he's sitting in his bedroom, right, he hears his parents come home and come into the house, and all of a sudden his mom comes up to his door and starts knocking. And she goes, Aiden, let me in. And he's like, not right now, Mom. And she goes, what are you talking about? Let me in. Unlock this door. Why do you have the door locked? And he's like, no, I'm not opening the door. And his mom goes, all right, I'll just get the key and unlock it. So he grabs this baseball bat that's chilling in his room, and he's prepared for this thing to come in. And at the time, he still thinks whatever, was calling his name in the kitchen, this is them. So he sees the handle jiggle and the door open, and it's really his mom. And he can tell that it is actually his real mom. And she goes, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, nothing. And he sets the bat down, and she's like, you're acting weird and stuff. And there's food in the fridge if you're hungry. So he didn't know what to make of that. What did he just experience? And he didn't feel like he could tell his parents about it. So he decided to talk to his grandpa, who was kind of like his best friend at the time. So he goes to his grandpa's room, and he's like, Grandpa, he's like, have you ever seen something you can't explain? And he goes, what do you mean? And he tells the story about how he thought his mom and dad had came home, he's seen their car and everything, but it wasn't actually them. And the grandpa goes, oh no. And he goes, what's wrong, Grandpa? And he says, well, when I was a young boy, I grew up in a small Polish village near Warsaw. And he said, we had this term that was this long Polish word, but it roughly translated into evil twin. And he said they believed there were these evil spirits that could take the form of anyone and would try and trick you and lure you, out into the woods. So his grandpa said, when I was a young boy, my father had me chopping wood outside. And I hear my grandma's voice coming from the forest. And she's saying, come in the woods. I baked you a pie. Come out here. It's nice and warm. You'll like this pie. And he said, he was so hungry, he almost started to go out into the woods until his father ran and grabbed him and said, get back in the house. And his father locked the door and said, if you hear someone calling you from the woods, don't ever go. Don't respond. So he said, when you encounter an evil twin, as they called it, they will follow you for the rest of your life. And he feared that maybe this thing had followed him here to America. And this is what Aiden had seen. A couple weeks later, his parents are gone, and it's just him and his grandpa, and they're watching this World War II documentary in the living room. Well, all of a sudden, the wind picked up, and a strong breeze pushes the back kitchen door open, and they hear it, open up. So his grandpa's like, I'll go and close the door real quick, and I better lock it so it doesn't blow open again. So his grandpa goes into the kitchen, but after about 10, 15 minutes, he doesn't come back. So Aiden's like, Grandpa, are you all right? He goes into the kitchen, the back door's still open, and he doesn't see his grandpa. He goes throughout the house, he's yelling his name, he doesn't see him anywhere. So he goes out to the back door, and he's yelling his grandpa's name. He doesn't hear it. So he calls up his parents, and his parents come home immediately, and they call the police, and they do this big search throughout the neighborhood and into the woods. And they end up finding his grandfather in the middle of the woods. He is completely naked. He is confused and doesn't know who he is, doesn't know anything, doesn't remember anything. So they bring him back home and everything. Well, Aiden said that, they chalked this up to dementia and said he was diagnosed with a severe case of dementia. But Aiden, in his mind, suspected, because of the series of events that happened before this and his grandfather going out to the kitchen when the door opened, that this was the evil twin thing that his grandfather had talked about. And he said, although his grandfather had completely lost his memory, from time to time, he would say to Aiden, "Is my brother outside? Is my brother out there?" And he couldn't figure out why, his grandfather would keep saying that. And then he realized maybe this thing appeared as his brother, and it lured him, into the woods.
My name is Abby. When I was growing up, I loved going to my abuelo Miguel's house because he had made a whole section just for the Dora Explorer movies, and I could sit there for hours watching them. I loved my abuelo, but I was also a little scared of him because he had a very strong voice. When my little brother Smith was born, we would go over more often, and I'd see how much he loved us both, so I grew even closer to him. Sadly, when I was 9 and Smith was 1, he passed away. I want to say it was a couple of weeks after his passing that my dad got a job offer in Pennsylvania. We were living in California at the time, so instead of flying, we decided to drive to save money. The road trip itself was actually fun. I remember eating peanuts with my stepmom, Wendy, and listening to music along the way. Later that night, while we were still on the road, we all started to fall asleep. First my brother, then my stepmom. I asked my dad where we were, and he told me we were driving through New Mexico. The road was dark and empty, with no cars in sight. I remember feeling a little spooked, but my dad told me to try and get some rest. Eventually, I slowly began to fall asleep. Later on, I suddenly woke up to the loudest "ay," or maybe "hey," I had ever heard, followed by 3 sharp claps. We all jolted awake. Smith immediately started crying, and my stepmom turned to look at my dad. That's when we realized my dad had fallen asleep behind the wheel for just a second, right before the voice and the claps were heard. My stepmom told my dad that the voice sounded like my abuelo Miguel, and everything suddenly clicked. His strong voice immediately came to mind. There was no doubt about it. That was my abuelo's voice. I had heard it many times before, especially when I'd get yelled at for touching his adornos de Navidad, his Christmas decorations. And shortly after, we pulled over and stopped at a motel for the night. Now I have a son, and his middle name is Miguel, in his honor. I wish I had been given more years with my abuelo, but I know he will always be with us. When we unknowingly needed him the most, he was there.
You can't make this stuff up. Might have known the story of real-life boogeyman.
In June of 2011, law student Lauren Giddings was only one test away from completing her dream and becoming a public defender. Even though she had a ton of studying still to do, she had taken off the first week in June to go to her sister's wedding where she was the maid of honor. Right before she left the wedding to go back to school, she joked with her family that she was going to be locking herself in the library and just studying 24/7 and that nobody should get in touch with her. But when she got back to campus, none of her classmates that she studied with saw her at the library. And in fact, when they didn't see her for a couple of days, they started reaching out to her and texting her and calling her to see if she was okay. But she never picked up, she never wrote back, and so no one knew what was going on with her. One of Lauren's classmates would reach out to Lauren's sister and would ask her, "Hey, have you talked to your sister at all? Because we haven't seen her." And Lauren's sister would write back and say, "Oh no, everything is just fine. Lauren told us before she left the wedding that she was going to be locking herself away and just studying 24/7, so I'm sure everything is just fine." But this this classmate wasn't convinced because this felt very uncharacteristic of Lauren to not study at the library and then not to pick up any phone calls or text messages. So she would call the police and say, hey, can you please go check on Lauren's apartment because I think something's wrong. So a police officer goes over to Lauren's apartment and knocks on the door. Lauren doesn't answer. They try the door. It's locked. The officer goes outside and looks around the outside of her apartment. There's no broken windows. There's no obvious signs of a break-in. And so the officer leaves and says, I can't do anything else unless you guys file a missing person report. So a couple of days go by and there's still no word from Lauren. And at this point, Lauren's family is now concerned and they do file a missing persons report. So the police go back to Lauren's apartment. They try knocking. She doesn't come to the door. The door is still locked. So they get the owner of the apartment building to open up her door. And when they go inside, Lauren's not in there. And at first, it doesn't seem like anything is wrong until they notice her cell phone, her keys, her purse, and her laptop are all still in there. This made the police think there could be something sinister happening here. And so they went to Lauren's friends and family and they asked, does she have any enemies? Does she have any reason to be fearful for her life? Initially, they said, no one would want to harm Lauren. Everybody loves Lauren. But Lauren's sister would say to the police that there was actually one comment Lauren made a year ago that now seemed a little bit more relevant. Lauren had just got back from a vacation and she noticed there were things in her apartment that seemed like they had been moved, like someone else had been here, but no one was supposed to be in her apartment. And so she told her sister, and the two of them talked about it a little bit, but it was quickly forgotten about because there wasn't a reasonable explanation and Lauren was so busy with school, she didn't pursue it. After police have done a thorough investigation of the inside of Lauren's apartment, they move outside of her apartment and begin scanning the exterior of the building, and they make a huge discovery. An officer who was looking in the dumpster noticed this big black trash bag that looked out of place, and when he tried to move it, it was very heavy, and when they opened it, they found a human torso, and it was Lauren's. Right before this discovery was made, a news crew had shown up outside the apartment building and was trying to interview people that lived in the apartment complex because they had been tipped off that somebody who was living here had been missing for over a week, and now police were getting involved. They saw what looked like a resident of the building looking visibly shaken up, watching the police doing their investigation, and they went over to interview him. It would turn out his name was Stephen McDaniel, and he was Lauren's neighbor, and he was a classmate of hers in law school. The interviewer asked Stephen, what was your last interaction with Lauren? And Stephen became really focused on how he had not seen her in the last week. And in fact, speaking on behalf of my other classmates, no one's seen her. She must have just vanished. As they're doing this interview, right on the other side of a bush, this police officer discovers Lauren's torso, and the news kind of gets out to the interviewer, they've found a body. And the interviewer says out loud to Stephen, it looks like they found a body. And Stephen just completely changes, and he goes, a body? And then he goes completely silent to the point where the interviewer says, are you okay? And he just stands there looking completely distant before walking away from the interviewer, sitting down with his back turned and hyperventilates before the interview ends. Once this case went from missing person to homicide, the police started searching all the rooms on Lauren's floor. And Stephen's room is right next to Lauren's, so he was the first room they searched. Apparently, as they began searching his room, he was standing just outside the door and sweating profusely and drank over 10 bottles of water. In his apartment, they found a key to Lauren's apartment. And what he would do is whenever she was gone, he would sneak into her room and download her hard drive, as well as steal little souvenirs like small articles of clothing and other things that he would hoard in his apartment. When they went on Stephen's computer and checked his browser history, basically the only things he did on the internet were look at Lauren's Facebook and LinkedIn profiles. But the creepiest thing they found was this camera that was literally duct taped to this long pole. And on the camera were all these surveillance videos of Lauren, because what he would do is he would go outside and he would hoist up this camera and he would film her through her windows in the middle of the night. Stephen was quickly charged with Lauren's murder, to which he pled guilty, and he would openly confess to the details of how she died in court. Most times, he used this surveillance footage to confirm she was not in her apartment so he could sneak in and steal from her. But on the day she was murdered, he would use that camera technique to confirm she was home. And shortly after confirming she was in fact home and asleep, he put on a mask and used his key to get into her apartment and walked right into her room, which woke her up. According to Stephen, she apparently sat up and said, "You need to leave." At this point, he jumps on the bed, and in their struggle, his mask would come off, and Lauren would recognize it's clearly Stephen, and she would plead with him by name to stop. But he didn't stop, and he would strangle her to death. Afterwards, he dragged her into the bathroom and began cutting her up into fairly small pieces. Some of those pieces got flushed down the toilet. The others were put in bags, and only one of those bags was ever discovered, and that was the one of her torso. Stephen was ultimately given a life sentence. Here is a highlight of Stephen's interview when it's revealed that they've discovered Lauren's body.
I mean, no one has seen her since Saturday. I haven't seen anything. I mean, I've always seen noise outside, but it's just people walking by pretty much. I mean, we just don't know where she is.
What about in the parking lot area? I know they've been doing a lot of, I think that's where they have recovered the body or whatever they recovered from there.
Body?
Had you seen anything there? Had you seen anything there? I mean, we don't know if this is the same person. You know what I mean? Like, they took out a body there earlier. We don't know if it's the same person or not. So that's why we're trying to ask people if they know who lived there. Are you okay, sir?
I think I need to sit down.
Okay.
Here's another haunted hospital that we need to talk about. This is the Candler Hospital, the old Candler Hospital in Savannah, Georgia. We will be discussing some pretty dark themes when it comes to this hospital, so just watch out. The Candler Hospital was opened in 1804, and it is the second longest continuous running hospital in the United States. When it first opened up, it was a hospital where men who had been injured at sea could come and get the help that they needed. But then in 1920, the yellow fever broke out, and so it became a hospital for a lot more. Obviously, a lot of people would pass away from this sickness, but what is even more terrifying is the tunnels that run through this hospital. Apparently, there are some tunnels that run from the Candler Hospital under Forsyth Park. And what they would do is when someone would pass away from yellow fever, they would put their bodies in these tunnels and then wait until nightfall and take them all the way through the tunnel where a horse-drawn carriage was waiting, and they would load up these bodies and then go bury them, allegedly where nobody knows where they are. People say that now at night, you can often see the spirits of these people who were left in these tunnels just kind of wandering around, and I'm just not interested in checking that out at all. But even more disturbing is the old Candler tree, oak tree that is on the property, or also known as the hanging tree. Now, we can gather a lot of information from that tree, but the scariest part of this is people have said they've walked by this tree at night and seen ghosts hanging from the tree, which personally is probably one of the most terrifying things that I've ever heard. But I don't know if these are just legends or what, but it could stand to reason that with all the stuff that has probably happened here, that there are some restless spirits. So what are your thoughts on this? Let me know down in the comments and follow for more.
It's raining and cars are honking all around me. They're so mad at each other. So I'm gonna sit tight and share a story while I pass the time, and hopefully by the time my story's over, the parking lot is mostly empty. I don't do honking very well, so we're gonna hang tight in the rain. I'm gonna share a little story. Hang on, let's get situated. Now, this story comes from my sister, who I wrongly said didn't have any experiences. Apparently, I was dead ass wrong. She did have a few experiences, and we were talking about it a couple weeks ago. She shared some with me, and I'm going to share with you what she told me. There was one night in our Japanese home. She's in her bedroom, I'm in my bedroom. It's nighttime, we're sleeping. I hear this god-awful scream come from her bedroom, and it freaks me out, so I rip the blankets off of me. I charge through my bedroom. Now remember, our bedrooms are like a couple feet away from each other, so I make it to her bedroom within what feels like a second. And I flip the light on, and I'm standing there thinking, like, what the hell is happening? She's sitting straight up in bed, petrified, shaking, And I was like, what happened to you? What's wrong? She's like, I had a bad dream. And so I told her, I was like, okay, well, come to my bed. You can sleep in my bedroom. I have the closet creature, but strength in numbers, right? So she's sleeping in my bed, and I hear my mom running up the stairs, and she bursts through my door, and she goes, oh my God, what the hell was that? And my sister shoots up out of bed. She goes, I had a bad dream. And my mom goes, okay, we'll stay in here tonight. Try to get some good sleep. My mom wasn't very good at comforting us when we had spooky things happen. She just pretty much was like, all right. And she goes back down the stairs. I think nothing of it. I truly believe that she had just a nightmare, a really bad dream, and she woke up in a panic. Now, when I was talking to her a couple weeks ago, I asked her, I said, hey, do you remember the night that you woke up screaming and I brought you to my bed? And she goes, yeah. I was like, in your nightmare, what was your nightmare about? And she said, well, it wasn't a nightmare. And I said, well, you told everybody it was a nightmare. She goes, well, yeah, because nobody was going to believe me. Once again, I feel so bad for her. She said that while she was sleeping, she heard the whispering and she woke up. And she looked in the corner of her room, and this really tall, skinny shadow figure that she has in her room was standing in the corner. That part is already pretty unnerving. What made her scream was that it was in the corner, then it was on the ceiling, crawling at her. So she screamed. She said that when I burst through the door and turned the light on, that everything went away. And I said, I'm sorry. Back it up. What? And she said, yeah, that her little corner creature that she had, that little misty shadow figure, whatever it was, because I never saw it in her room. She said that it was very tall and skinny, and that it went up into the ceiling and it crawled over to her. I don't know what's worse, my closet creature or her corner shadow man that crawls on the ceiling.
Enjoyed the story from my comment section. I decided to share a couple more short stories today. Now I will be changing people's names for privacy reasons, and I will be reading word for word. So if something doesn't make sense, I will try to fix it and let you know that's what I'm doing. Time in the morning as a stay-at-home mom. After prepping the kids to school, I had a nap but couldn't keep my eyes closed. Something came to me and tried to suffocate me. Woke up and I rebuked it. When I woke up, I heard a loud sound outside the window. I heard in my spirit, goodbye. I am gone. That was my stepdad saying goodbye. My husband came home to tell me he had passed away. He was misunderstood as a person. He walked me down the aisle. When he was sick, I'd send him money for medication. By the way, the sound from outside was a big hole on the ground. It looked like a grave, and I knew it was confirmation he was already gone. Back to us in 2017 through 2019. My kids kept seeing an old man all throughout the house. He was mean to them, but they always see him and I never seen him. But there were a few times where he made his presence known to me by knocking things down, and I would just say, now why would you do that? And he would leave me alone for a while. Large home for my daughter and I while I was pregnant with my son. My daughter used to say she was scared of an old man. My mom told her to tell him, you're dead. Days later at night, we heard my 2-year-old saying, you are dead. And she was never scared again. Well, there we go. So when I lived close downtown Phoenix, I would get knocking too. Maybe about 5 occasions. Sometimes it was the door, other times the window. I tried to peep and see if I could catch who it was, but no one was there. I would hide, LOL. Later, I heard that it's considered witchcraft to get knocking after midnight.
Years ago, when my children were very young, we lived across the hall from a woman who would always try to give us food. I always refused it. If I took it, it went into the garbage when I went outside. I was taught not to take food or objects from strangers, so it wasn't happening. This lady realized whatever she was trying to do wasn't working, so she called CPS anonymously on me. Really? That night, I asked God to reveal who would lie so maliciously on me. Now, there we go. The very next morning, I was standing in the front of the building with my babies when she saw us. My children said hello, and I said hello. The look she gave us was so evil and so demonic, I immediately pled the blood of Jesus in her face. The lady never spoke to us again and moved less than a month later. No weapon formed. She tried it, but God don't play about me and mine. How did you feel about the short stories in my comments? And 2, what do you guys think that was they were each going through? And what story was your favorite?
I need to tell you guys this ghost story. I work maintenance at an apartment complex. Nothing glamorous, fixing leaks, patching walls, cleaning units after tenants move out. The building I work in is mostly for elderly residents and people with mental health issues, so strange complaints aren't exactly rare. One tenant, though, definitely stood out. He used to call the office constantly, always saying the same thing. There was banging on his walls, late at night. Sharp, repetitive knocks that would wake him up. We checked every time, and every time the woman in the neighboring unit denied it. She was quiet, kept to herself, never caused problems, and since there was no proof, and since the man complaining wasn't exactly known for being stable, there wasn't much we could do. Eventually, the woman moved out. That's when the unit became my responsibility. For the first few days, everything felt normal. Empty apartment, stale air, the usual smell of old carpet and disinfectant. I cleaned, patched, hauled out trash. Nothing unusual. Until the last day. The moment I stepped inside the unit, my body reacted before my brain could catch up. A shiver crawled down my spine, slow and deliberate. The room wasn't colder. If anything, the temperature was the same as the hallway, but I felt cold. Heavy, like the air itself had weight. There was pressure. Not on my chest exactly, just everywhere. The kind of feeling you get when you know you're being watched, even when you aren't. I tried to ignore it. I told myself I was tired, that maybe I hadn't eaten enough. I kept working, expecting the feeling to fade. It didn't. It followed me from room to room, lingering, pressing, never lifting. If that had been all, I would have been able to brush it off, but it wasn't. You need to understand the layout of the place. The front door opens into a hallway, and there's about an inch of space underneath it, just enough to see shadows if someone is standing right outside. The windows face the north side of the building, which barely gets sunlight because of the overhanging roof. That side is almost always in shadow. By the end of the day, I was loading my tools and heading out. Took a few steps into the hall when I felt it, that urge. That unmistakable feeling that something is behind you, waiting for you to notice it. I turned around. Under the door, I saw the shadow of 2 feet. They were close, right up against the door. You don't see shadows like that unless someone is standing just a few feet away. My first thought was that someone had slipped in behind me without me noticing, but I knew that wasn't possible. I had been alone in that apartment all day. I stood there, staring, trying to make sense of it, until the feet moved. They didn't slide, they didn't flicker, they walked away, step by step. The shadow retreated from the door. I didn't scream, I didn't investigate. I turned around and walked away as fast as I could without breaking into a run. Later, I came back, not to the apartment, but to the outside of the building. I needed a logical explanation. Maybe someone walked past the window. Maybe the sun hit something just right. But it just didn't add up, no matter what I tried, no matter how I tried to rationalize it. The sun was high. The overhang blocked direct light. No one's shadow could have projected into that room the way I saw it. The angles were wrong. The timing was wrong. Everything was wrong. The only explanation I can come up with is that someone shined a light from somewhere, but even that feels like a stretch. People have died in that building. That's just a fact. When most of your residents are elderly, it happens. I don't know if anyone died in that specific unit, but I wouldn't be surprised. One last detail I didn't mention earlier. The woman who lived in the apartment, she didn't have legs. She was in a wheelchair. And to this day, the only thing I can remember seeing are the feet.
Hey y'all, I'm back with another spooky scary story time. This is not my scary story time. I heard this while I was taking a shower on YouTube. I was watching like the compilations from TikTok of the scary stories. But yeah, so there's this boy, right? I guess he was the only child, so like he could only make friends. So this boy, he had made this friend right when he moved into like this new area that he wasn't familiar with. His parents wasn't familiar with it anyways, right? So he makes this friend, right? And the friend is so like heartwarming and welcoming. His family is welcoming. They have sleepovers. They eat dinner together all the time. He always invites this boy over to like watch movies with the family, and the family will let the boy pick for all of them to watch. The family will let him pick any snacks that the whole family would eat. So he felt like this was basically like his second family, right? So everything seems like it was good, except for every time that it's time for them to go to bed, he would get this bad feeling of being scared. I'm not gonna lie, this story got me like looking at my window and looking at my door. But yeah, so every time it's time for bed, he gets scared, right? So every night he's waking up by this tapping noise that's on the window. From the story that I was listening to, they don't really say if the friend was hearing anything. They always said that the boy was up by himself. So yeah, every night he's hearing this tapping noise, right? And oh my god, it's so scary. So he's looking at the window to see what the tapping noise is, because at first he thought it was like a tree branch that keeps hitting on the window. But when he's looking at the window, he starts seeing like it's dark, but he can see a face. Now to him, the thing didn't look human. It looked like a D word. And he just forces himself to go to sleep this night, right? A couple nights go by and his friend asks if he wants to come over again. So he's getting hype and he's not even thinking about the weird shit that was happening the first time he spent the night. But basically, he spends the night and the same shit happens again. And this time, he's like, should I tell the parents or should I not? And he decides he's not. Now a couple days go by again and the friend invites him over again. He goes over there, right? Same thing happens. He's hearing tapping on the window at the same time, right? Now this particular time, he's hearing tapping, but once the tapping stops, it's so dark, but he can hear the window of the room that they're in being opened, like slowly, but he can hear it. And he can't really see, like I said, because it's dark, but he ends up seeing like a hand come from inside the house and go back outside, like if they was like trying to climb in or something after they opened it. I don't know, but that scared him shitless. I don't know what he did after that, but I would have called my parents and told them to come pick me up because I'm not staying there. Now we're talking about a whole different night, right? A whole different night. Same bullshit going on. But this particular night, right? He wakes up and he's like, okay, I'm thirsty. Now his grandmother told him, if you ever wake up in the middle of the night thirsty, that means somebody is watching you. So he's keeping that in his mind, but he's like, I'm gonna go get a drink of water and I'm gonna go back to sleep because I don't want to deal with this tonight. But instead of seeing something at the window, when he gets up to go get his water in the kitchen, he looks at the front door and the front door isn't open, but he sees a tall black bald-headed man just staring at him in the dark, like surprised that he's up at this time. So they're just looking at each other like what the fuck? And the person ends up backing up slowly, going out of the door and closing it. I don't think that he locked the door after that. He just went in the room with a friend and went back to sleep. He didn't even grab a drink of water. But my whole thing is, why you didn't tell any parent right then and there? But they was basically trying to like make him feel okay and make sure that like he don't have nothing to worry about, right? Because this is okay. So for some fucking reason, my shit kept cutting me off while I was talking, and then when I was like actually being able to record a certain video or a certain part for the video, it was cutting off the beginning of my video. I don't know what the hell was wrong with my phone. And then my TV just shut off by itself. My TV don't ever do that. And if you see my first video that I posted today, my phone camera turned around by itself and it turned back to me and it turned right back around by itself. My phone don't ever do that when I record. I don't know what's wrong, but this is part 2 to the story, right? So y'all know how I was saying he didn't tell nothing to his friend's parents right then and there. He waited till the next day to say something to them, right? So when he said something to them the day after, he basically, after that situation, he tells them he don't feel comfortable, weird stuff is going on, and they trying to reassure him, boom boom boom, you know how that go, oh, you safe this, you safe that, if you need anybody, we here for you, we got cameras, this and that and the third, right? So after that situation, he don't even go chill out with that friend no more. He started telling that friend like little excuses of why he don't want to hang out with the friend when he invite him over, right? So they stop hanging around each other. Sooner or later, the friend starts getting like newer friends. So now they really not hanging out at all. So now the person, which is the little boy, he ends up moving away from wherever it was that he was living at. And then I guess when he hit the age of like 25, he decided to move back and he rekindled with his friend. They was sitting at like a restaurant or a cafe, whatever, talking about the good memories that they had at this house. And he proceeds to tell the friend finally why he stopped chilling over at this friend's house. Now the friend proceeds to tell the boy that somebody in the neighborhood was like attacking people all at the same time every single night, and come to find out it was this mentally ill neighbor that was supposed to be being watched 24 hours of the day. He wasn't supposed to be left unattended at all, not even once. And for some reason he kept like escaping the house, and he would terrorize people, and then right after he was done terrorizing people, he would go to this boy's house every single night at the same time. Now, when the parents of the friend found this information out, they did make a police report. But the reason they made a police report is because they had an incident with him themselves. So the family, I guess, was like going on a trip out of the country or whatever, and the dad had forgot something like before they left, so he went all the way back to the house to get that something that they forgot. And when they got there, it was the tall, bald-headed man just in the house, but he was like scared or whatever. I don't know, he was mentally ill, so please forgive me if I seem like I'm coming off rude, but that's the reason why they made a police report, and that's how they found out that he was mentally ill. They obviously didn't hold him accountable for any of the attacks in the neighborhood. They didn't hold him accountable for like trying to harm anybody or for like breaking into anybody's home. They just put him into a more strict and like place where they have more security, I guess. And that's pretty much it. That's the full story time. But I feel like that's more scarier than like a spirit or a ghost haunting you. Like, this is an actual person that can physically hurt you with anything they look at, or just hurt you with their bare hands. Like, but if y'all want more story times, let me know, because I love posting for y'all.
A ghost photo with receipts and history. I'm sad. A photographer took this while they were there, like taking photos of the house, and the realtor was there with them. As soon as they got there, the homeowner was like, hey, heads up, this house is haunted, because back during the Civil War, it was a hospital for a little bit, and then they were like operated on in here, and then they were moved out into this field in tents like this, where they just kind of, they were just waiting to see if they made it or not. A lot of them didn't make it because they were literally doing like operations like this, right? So then they would be put in these big mass graves out in this and just kind of forgotten about, which is horrible and sad. And then ghosts like these show up. Now, people are saying that's not a ghost, it's a trash bag, whatever. So let's zoom in on it. Doesn't look like a trash bag to me. They said that they were taking a photo of the tree that kind of looked like it was smiling, and they would have noticed that that was there, and it wasn't there when they took the photo. Looks a lot like this style of dress, don't you think? Yeah, I do. I really do. People were still debating it, being like, you know what? No, it's a trash bag. It's just like a lens flare. It's something. So they did a side-by-side. The realtor went back to the house, took this photo, tried to get it like as good as they possibly could. I don't know. But you can see like right here is where that should have been, and it's not there. So looks like a ghost to me. If it looks like a ghost, walks like a ghost, stands like a ghost, maybe it's a ghost. What do you think? I'm sure you'll have something to say, and I can't wait to hear it.
He kidnapped 3 different girls, held them in his house for over a decade, and no one had any idea. Everyone just thought he was a family man. In fact, some of the girls he kidnapped literally trusted him because he was the father of their friend. This guy is just the epitome of evil and scary and horrible. Today I'm going to be telling you guys about a horrible man. My brain can't comprehend that there are people that do these kind of things out there. Like, can't imagine that someone would ever be motivated enough to hurt anyone, but especially kidnapping 3 different young girls, taking them from their families, their children, and he just tormented them for years. My brain can't comprehend that that's something that someone would do. So I'm going to start the story actually kind of at the end. So on May 6th of 2013, so just like 12 years ago, a man named Charles Ramsey was walking outside of his house. I think he was probably doing yard work or whatever he was doing, and he hears someone like calling for help. He looks over and he sees a woman and a child inside behind the screen door of his neighbor's house. And he walks up to see what they need. They say that they need to escape this house. Obviously, he is concerned for them. Why would someone need to escape a house? And so he tells them, like, let's try kicking in this screen door to make a hole in it. When she gets out of the house, she says that she'd been held prisoner there for the past 10 years, and he ends up calling 911. When the police arrive, they're met with something that is just beyond shocking. This woman is saying that she's been held captive in this house, which alone is a horrifying thing to hear, and that's not something that happens every day. Tells them that she was abducted 10 years before, and that her name is Amanda Berry. And they're like, Amanda Berry, we've been looking for you literally for the last decade. And they're shocked and horrified to find out that she's been in the area this whole entire time. For a while they thought maybe she was a runaway, but no, she's been in the area. She was kidnapped and held captive. No one had any idea that she was just in this house in this regular neighborhood. She also had a 6-year-old little girl with her, and when they ask who this is, she says that that is her daughter that she had in captivity with this man. So police are obviously like shocked, jaw on the floor. Like, how do you even process all of that information? And then they find out that Amanda Berry is not the only woman inside. There are 2 other women inside this house being held prisoner. So in total, this horrible man had 4 prisoners. So they discover that the other 2 women are Michelle Knight. She actually disappeared a year before Amanda Berry did. She disappeared on August 23rd of 2002. And then they discovered that the other woman in the house is Gina De Jesus, who has been missing since she was 14. So 3 women, and 2 of them were actually little girls, children, when they were kidnapped, have been living in his home for 10 years, and then he also fathered a child with one of them. So police are like, who is this horrible monster of a person? And they discovered that his name is Ariel Castro. He was not at the house when Amanda escaped, so they start looking into him to try to figure out where he could be so they can go arrest him, because clearly he's horrendous. They learned that Ariel was born in 1960, so he's about 53 when the girls escaped, so he would have been in his 40s when he first started kidnapping. The police learned that as an adult he ended up meeting a woman, they end up moving in together, and they end up having 4 kids together, and they moved to a house, and this is the house that he ends up holding these girls prisoner in. It was 2207 Seymour Avenue, located in Cleveland, Ohio. Nothing seems out of the ordinary about their neighborhood, about their house. It's a regular home. It's 1,400 square feet, 4 bedroom, 1 bath. It's about like 760 square feet in the basement. But he ends up being very violent. He started to beat her a lot. He broke her nose, her ribs, her arm. At one point, he pushed her so hard, she fractured her skull, and it actually ended up creating an inoperable tumor from a blood clot, and ultimately, years later, it is what killed her. So he just beat her and abused her and was horrific to his wife and the mother of his children. Eventually, she leaves him and takes the kids with her. He is left in this house without his children, without his wife, and we know that he was still like in contact with his kids. It sounds like the kids in his school saw him. Maybe he went to the school activities and like their sporting events and stuff like that, but I don't think he had really any custody over his kids, but he was still in their lives. Outside of the family, no one really knew this was going on, so again, he just kind of seemed like a normal dude. I think probably some people felt like he wasn't the greatest guy, but it sounds like not a lot of people really knew she was being abused. People didn't know that he was actually like dangerous. So about 6 years after his family moves out and his wife leaves him, his kids are like older. I think they're all kind of in high school or middle school ages at this point. This is when he decides he wants to kidnap his first victim. He is a bus driver at this point, and a woman named Michelle Knight. She's 21 years old. She is on the bus and she is getting kind of frazzled because she's getting lost. She's supposed to be appearing in court for a custody hearing for her son, and she can't figure out where this like courthouse is, and she's getting panicked because if you're late to that, that's not a good look if you're trying to get custody of your son back. She's going because her mom's boyfriend broke her son's leg, and so obviously like child services got involved, took him from the home, and now she's trying to prove like that wasn't her and that she should have her kid. And so she's very concerned about not being able to find where she's supposed to go. And Ariel strolls up and says like, hey, don't worry, I'll help you, don't worry. And she actually recognizes him. She recognizes him because she knows one of his daughters who's around her age. And so immediately she kind of lets her guard down. She's like, thank goodness someone I know, someone can help me. So she trusts him, she goes with him, and instead of bringing her to the courthouse, he brings her to his house, locks her up for 10 years, and says she's never going to see her son again. Once she's being held in total solidarity in his home, he is tormenting, essaying, assaulting, brutalizing her, like the worst things you could be doing to a human. He actually at one point took the only photo she had of her son that she had had on her person when she was going to the courthouse that day. He took that photo, he tore it up in front of her and said, you will never see your son again. So he's also psychologically like and emotionally tormenting her, not just physically. At one point, he even got a dog for her, and when she didn't listen or comply or do something he wanted, I'm not sure what exactly happened that made him so angry, but he killed the dog by snapping its neck in front of her. And so he just did awful, horrible things to her for about a year until he decided that one victim was not enough, and he decided he wanted to kidnap a second girl. This time, he ended up kidnapping a child, and he kidnapped Amanda Berry. She was 16. She was kidnapped one day before her 17th birthday. It was April 21st of 2003. Amanda had just gotten off of her shift at Burger King that night and she was headed home, and then she never made it back. And then he started torturing both Amanda and Michelle and doing all the horrible things he had been doing to Michelle to Amanda as well. At first, they weren't sure if Amanda had gone missing, if she ran away, but eventually like missing posters are up. People are thinking that something happened to her. They have no idea where she went, and her family is very, very concerned. A year after he takes Amanda, he decides he needs a third victim, and this is when he kidnaps an even younger kid, a 14-year-old named Gina De Jesus. Actually, during this time, throughout the 10 years, he ended up getting Michelle. And trigger warning here, this is pretty brutal. We're talking about miscarriages, and honestly, that's like a really gentle term for what happened. So just proceed with caution. But he ended up getting Michelle pregnant 5 separate times. Each time that she got pregnant, Ariel would beat her so violently and brutally that she would miscarry. And then he ended up getting Amanda pregnant. This time, he decided that he wanted Amanda to have the baby, and so he made Michelle help deliver this baby. After making sure that he murdered any of her own, he made her help deliver Amanda's child in an inflatable pool in the house, and he told Michelle that if the baby didn't survive, he would kill her. So Michelle ends up helping deliver this baby. Amanda and Michelle are incredible that they were able to do this. At one point, the baby actually stops breathing and Michelle resuscitates it. Amanda ended up raising the daughter, and she taught her to read and write while she was in captivity. After they are freed and they're telling the police everything and they're all rushed to the hospital, actually Michelle was told that she only had days to live based on her injuries. Her hands, her legs, like they were numb, and there's a nerve damage from them being tied up so tight, and she was just in a horrible condition. Clearly Michelle is a badass, she's a fighter, and she's like, no, I'm getting my life back, and she survives, and now she is happily married, and it sounds like she's like thriving. She did write a book that you guys could go check out, but it sounds like she does live a pretty private life overall. Amanda and her daughter, which this is a photo of them, I'm gonna blur the daughter's face. She might be an adult at this point, but I'm gonna keep her face blurred either way because I just think that's better. She and her daughter are together, and Amanda and Gina actually work together a lot on helping other people, speaking out about their experience. Gina and Amanda have both written books. They go to schools and they talk to students about different safety things. They talk about their experiences, and they are just also incredible women. They are survivors, and they just blow me away. After they escaped, the police were able to track down Ariel Castro. He was sentenced to life in prison plus 1,000 years, so he was never going to see the light of day, thankfully, and there was no chance of parole. But a month into his prison sentence, he did end up taking his own life, and so he never really faced any of the consequences of his actions. But fortunately, he's no longer on earth to be harming anyone anymore. What he did disrupted so many girls' lives, their families, their communities, and his selfish, horrible, awful choices have a lasting impact. These women are so strong, they're so incredible, and I wanted to tell you guys about them. Like I said, you should go read their books. They are just like my jaws on the floor with everything they went through and all that they survived, and still they choose to do good and help others.